Good afternoon, and welcome to First Parish and the 9th Annual Forum on Ending Family Homelessness, the theme of which is the adverse effects of housing insecurity on the overall development of young children. My name is Jane Blumberg, and I'm a member of First Parish, and I'm on the steering committee for the Advocacy Network to End Family Homelessness. It's really wonderful to see you all here. I see a lot of familiar faces, and even more thrilled to see unfamiliar faces. That's what it's all about. We're always trying to expand the number of people who commit a little time, a little effort to stopping family homelessness in Massachusetts through their advocacy. A lot of you know Carl Miller, who is the coordinator for the steering committee for the Advocacy Network. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with shingles yesterday. So we know that he's here in spirit, and he's here in every little detail, but he's not here physically. So we're all thinking of him. I'd like to ask you to turn off your cell phones, if you would, please. I'd like to recognize the legislators who are with us today. If I could ask them to rise, please. We have Senator Jamie Eldridge. You can stand up, Senator Eldridge, wherever you are. He went downstairs. We have Representative Corey Atkins. Representative Tom Stanley. Senator Mike Barrett will be arriving a little bit later. And we're grateful, really grateful that you're here this afternoon. Thank you so much. Oh, I didn't know you were going to be able to make it. Nice to see you. Tom Conroy, Representative Tom Conroy. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you. I know that Senator Eldridge and Representative Atkins need to leave a little early to attend other events, but they are terrific partners in this work and stalwart supporters of programs that address the crisis of homelessness in Massachusetts, and we thank them for this. I would also like to thank the other sponsors of this event, UU Mass Action Network. Jesse Yeager's here. Thank you. And Cooperative Metropolitan Ministries. And I would like to ask the new director, Whitney Ritalik, if she would just say a few words for CMM.
Hello, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I have been with Cooperative Metropolitan Ministries for about 1 month, and in that time, I have had the opportunity to meet some amazing, committed, and conscientious people working hard on issues of social justice, such as family homelessness. I am happy to know that CMM has been part of the Advocacy Network to End Family Homelessness since the beginning, so they have been part of all of these forums. And I am very proud to join in on that history and also to continue it. My home congregation is FPC Stone Acton. Today was our religious education day, and our minister talked about validating the inherent worth and dignity of each person, and through our religious education, our children. And I just look forward to hearing about how we can work to end family homelessness and do more acknowledging of the children and the families and their inherent worth and dignity. So thank you for being here.
There's Senator Eldridge. Would you just stand up for a moment? Thank you. So I wanted to give you a sense of what you can expect this afternoon. There will be 3 speakers. The keynote speech given by Christina Murphy from the National Center on Family Homelessness, followed by Elizabeth Heyer from the Department of Housing and Community Development. with an update on the Home Base program. We will then hear from Kelly Turley with the Interagency Council on Housing and Homelessness, speaking about unaccompanied youth homelessness. She will be followed by young man Jeremy, who will be speaking about his experience being homeless. Miriam Stein, advocacy consultant, will talk about the importance of citizen advocacy. And then we will have small discussion groups around the sanctuary for about 20 minutes, and we'll tell you what those topics are so that you can choose the group that's of greatest interest to you. Frank Austin from the Advocacy Network will then talk about what our key issues are going into this budget season, what we'll be advocating for. And then following this forum, we will move downstairs where there are refreshments and 20 service organizations with literature willing and interested in talking with you about ways to get involved to help homeless families. So now I would like to introduce Reverend Elaine Paris-Luer, the Senior Interim Minister here at First Parish and a lifelong activist for environmental and social justice issues. Reverend Paris-Luer.
It is an honor to be able to stand here and offer to you words of community prayer, a little bit of vision for your work today. The first thing I thought of when I was asked was that the original language of the Beatitudes was not "blessed are the peacemakers or those who struggle for justice," and it wasn't "happy are the single-heartedness of joining in that work," but the actual translation is more close to "you're in the right place if you are a peacemaker. You are in the right place if you are one who works for justice." So what I wanted you to do this morning as an opening is just breathe in a little bit of that gratitude for your work here. So just take a moment to thank yourselves for arriving in this place, for making this a priority in what I know are busy lives, hectic schedules. So breathe. Now turn to the person next to you, either side. Notice in that person's eyes their commitment to be here and say, "Thank you. Thank you." Thank you for being in this place. Thank you for acknowledging the geography of justice, to know where it is you stand, and that you arrived here to stand together with others who see the same need for justice, for respect, for human right. Thank you all, and namaste.
The National Center on Family Homelessness, founded in 1988, is the nation's foremost authority on family homelessness and the only national organization dedicated solely to helping homeless families. They conduct state-of-the-art research and develop, share, and implement innovative solutions to end family homelessness in America and give every child a chance. The National Center is an affiliate of American Institutes for Research. Christina Murphy oversees the National Center's communications and policy initiatives. Prior to joining the National Center, she managed community initiatives and worked on policies to increase participation in the federal nutrition programs at Project Bread, the Walk for Hunger in Massachusetts. She has also worked as a deputy press secretary for the Massachusetts Senate, on the communications team of a statewide gubernatorial campaign in Massachusetts, and as a legislative aide in the U.S. Senate. She received a Master of Management with a concentration in child, youth, and family policy from the Heller School of Social Policy and Management at Brandeis University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Child Development and Sociology from Tufts University. Please join me in welcoming Christina Murphy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here. I want to thank Jane and First Parish and the whole advocacy network and everyone for being here today to talk about this really important issue. As we get started, we just need to remove the book, covering up my presentation. So just briefly, the National Center on Family Homelessness was founded by a woman named Ellen Bassick, who is a psychiatrist and was working in one of the Boston city hospitals in the late 80s and began to see families coming into the emergency rooms and realizing that they were homeless. So she decided to become an advocate for those families and founded the National Center on Family Homelessness. When people think about homeless families in our country, people often think about families who are homeless during the Great Depression. And this picture is one of the well-known pictures of a homeless family during the Great Depression. After the Great Depression, there really weren't very many homeless families until about the 1980s. You can see from this chart that for those of you who can't read, the left column is 1980 and the right column is 2011. So over the last 3 decades, families have gone from about 1% of the population of people who are homeless to just about 40% of the population of people who are homeless. So it's been a dramatic increase since the 1980s. Today, there are about 1.6 million kids who are homeless in our country, in states all over. And that amounts to about 1 in 45 children. It's a significant number when you think about 2 classrooms of kids, at least throughout the country, at least one of those kids being homeless at some point over the course of a year. Why are kids and families homeless in our country? We have a major shortage of affordable housing. It's estimated that we have a shortage of about 6.8 million housing units. Also, there's nowhere in this country where one full-time worker earning minimum wage can afford to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment that's priced at fair market rent. When families or anyone becomes homeless, it's very traumatic. Pathways into homelessness include loss of housing, foreclosures, unemployment, domestic violence, victimization, traumatic loss, and catastrophic illness. The National Center on Family Homelessness put out a report recently called The America's Youngest Outcasts. It's a state report card on child homelessness, and I'm going to talk about some of the statistics in the report to give you an illustration of the trends over the last few years. In 2005, 2006, there were 1.5 million children who are homeless. That was 1 in 50. And that was an increase to that number from previous years, mostly due to the hurricanes that happened during that year, Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And those hurricanes caused one of the greatest mass migrations in the history of our country. And that really contributes to the big increase and to that 1.5 million children who are homeless during that year. The following year, many people who moved or became homeless because of the hurricanes resettled, and there was a decrease in homelessness down to 1.2 million, or 1 in 63. And like it says on the slide here, most of the states most impacted by the hurricanes decreased by about 450,000 children who are homeless. Then we look at the time period from 2007 to 2010, and we all know what happened during that time period. We're talking about the Great Recession, as many people call it. That during that time period, the number of kids who are homeless increased by 38%, or 448,000, so that now the number of kids who are homeless is even higher than the year of the hurricanes. And I think that's significant to note, that the effect of the recession and these years had a much bigger impact on families around the country than those hurricanes. And I don't want to minimize the impact of those hurricanes because that was significant, but just to compare and to note that the economic recession has really been throwing a lot of families at risk and into homelessness. So how about here in Massachusetts? In 2010, the report found just over 22,500 kids who are homeless. And when we're thinking back to the causes of homelessness that I talked about earlier, we were looking at nationwide how no one single person could afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Well, here in Massachusetts, you need to earn over $23 per hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. So you can see that here in Massachusetts, it's really difficult for families. So regardless of how someone becomes homeless, it's very traumatic. For kids and families and anyone who's homeless, being homeless means they're losing their home, their belongings, their community, their sense of security. It's very destabilizing. It increases exposure to violence, and sometimes it forces families to separate. Let's talk a little bit about kids and their experiences while homeless. So many of them moving at least once within a year, if not more. Kids are sick 4 times more often when they're homeless than their peers. They're hungry at twice the rate. And as I mentioned earlier, many, 22% or so, are separated from their families. When you think about the mental health impact of homelessness on kids, their developmental trajectories are derailed. They often have attachment disorders. 47% are anxious, withdrawn, and depressed. And by age 8, 1/3 of them have at least one major mental disorder. So it's a significant impact on children. When you look at the education of children who are homeless, only 15% attend preschool. And that's compared to almost 60% of their low-income counterparts. About 40% are attending more than 2 schools each year. And when you think about your kids or kids that you know, having to switch schools even once in a year is significant and can set kids back. And about 1/4 of them are repeating a grade because of that and other reasons. So I know you're going to be hearing a little more about challenges for homeless youth from Kelly later, but challenges for homeless youth are similar very many times to other people who are homeless, but they're really, because of the time period and of youth and the time in their lives, it's even more significant. Challenges for homeless youth include hard challenges getting a high school education, getting a job that pays more than minimum wage, increased exposure to violence, mental health and health issues, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. So the question is, and a question that the Advocacy Network is working on, and thank you to everyone else who's a part of that, how do we end child homelessness? Many families who are homeless are resilient. They can get through homelessness and go on to succeed and thrive. They just need supports and services to help regain stability. And I wanted to talk a little bit about brain development as we're talking about children. There's a term when you read the brain development literature called brain plasticity, and that's what enables us to survive and thrive. It's the ability of the brain to adapt to change and acquire new learning, and it's a significant part of the resiliency of kids and families who are homeless. And to illustrate that for you, for kids and youth, when you're looking at the development of executive functioning skills and the development of the brain, you can see on the left hand side of this chart, 90% of brain growth happens between the ages of 0 and 5. So kids who are homeless during that time period, who are going through traumas that their families are going through and are going through the stress of homelessness, when their brains are at such an important developmental time, it becomes really challenging because they're stressed and they're not able to concentrate on the development and the learning that they need to grow their brains during that time period. So the time period of 0 to 5 is really significant for brain growth, and about half of kids who are homeless are under the age of 6. So you can see that there's a really big need, particularly for young kids who are homeless, to support them and to get their families into services and stability that they need. The other really key period for brain development is, as many of you who have kids or teach kids or work with kids know, that during the teenage years, between 15 and 25, that's the second biggest period for brain growth in people's lives. And so when you talk about young adults during that time period who are developing and refining their brain and executive functioning skills, that's another really significant time period when the development can be derailed, but it's also a significant time period when you can really make a difference and help kids and their families regain stability and build their resiliency. So as I mentioned before, we think at the National Center on Family Homelessness, based on our years of research about kids and families who are homeless and what best will help them regain stability, we know that housing is absolutely essential. We've also learned that it's not sufficient and that families need services and supports to surround them and help them keep that stability in the long term. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every family needs an intense amount of services throughout their life. It just means that there's a variety of services and supports that surround families, and some may need just a quick referral for food stamps or for health insurance, and it will help them stabilize. Others may need varying amounts of services and supports throughout their lives, but it's a whole variety. And when you think about the community services and supports that your family uses on a day-to-day basis to help you through the day, you'll understand how important those services and supports are to kids and families. I know when I think about the services and supports from the community and family that I use with my 21-month-old daughter in order to go to work, in order to pay the rent, in order for my husband and I to be able to buy groceries, it really makes me empathize with the families and the kids that we're talking about here. So I'm sure everyone in the room agrees with me about this. It's not acceptable for even one child to be homeless for even one night, and that's why you're here. So thank you. And you're also here to learn about ways to take action. Jane mentioned that there are a bunch of organizations downstairs that are working here locally to end homelessness for kids and families and to support kids and families who are homeless. And that local support makes a really big difference. And so I encourage you to learn about the ways that you can help and to get involved. And for more information, you can find the National Center and our work on the web at www.familyhomelessness.org. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. And you have my email address for further questions and information. So I just want to thank